Hi, third grade. Welcome to Math Time with Miss Sierra at the kitchen table. We're going to be working on lesson 12.4 today, and it's all about lines. So first, I'm going to begin with talking about the three different types of lines that we're going to be learning about. The first is intersecting. And if you notice, an intersecting line means that they are lines that cross each other and they form an angle. These are called angles. So they form an angle. That's what an intersecting line is. The next type of line you're going to have are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines also intersect, except the difference is when they intersect, they create a perfect square. They create a 90-degree angle or a right angle. What you call a 90-degree angle is a right angle. Okay? And then the third type of line we're going to learn about is parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines that never intersect. They can go on for miles and miles and they are never going to intersect. So, do you see how if they're never going to cross paths, the distance between the lines stays the same. So, kind of think of like a railroad track. So the lines can go this way, they can go up, they can go horizontal, they can go up and down, but look, the distance between them does not change. They can go diagonal, but again, the distance between them does not change. So the best way to think of parallel lines is to think of like a ladder or a railroad track. Those are the type of lines that I think of when I think of parallel lines. Using my napkin holder, trying to be a little bit more resourceful. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple examples. The first one says, it gives us the instructions of look at the pink sides of the polygon. Tell if they are intersecting, perpendicular, or parallel. Choose all. Remember that word all means that you can have more than one option. So choose all the words that apply. So if I were to highlight these two lines, and I'm going to go through them and I'm going to ask myself, is this an intersecting line? Remember, you can go back to the examples. Do those look like intersecting lines? The answer would be no. They don't ever look like those two lines. The pink lines are never going to cross. So if they're not intersecting and they're never going to cross, then they can't be perpendicular, but they can be parallel. So on the line, I'm going to write parallel. One way that I remember parallel, meaning lines that will never intersect, is if you look at the two L's in them, they're just like the examples. They're two lines that are never going to intersect. So example number 2 is a triangle. Now triangles can look very different. This one in particular looks like this. And if I were to extend my line a little bit longer, I'm going to see that they intersect. They create angles. So I'm going to write that these ones intersect. So just because they intersect, I'm going to ask myself if they're perpendicular. If I look at my triangle, I'm going to think to myself, does it make a perfect square? Does it make a right angle? If I look at my example of what a perpendicular line is, does that what the triangle looks like? And I'm going to say no, that's not what the triangle looks like. So for this one, number 2, it only has the one example. Number 3, I'm going to look at this line and this line. And again, I'm going to ask myself, do they intersect? So if I were to look at them and you're going to extend them out a little bit, do they touch? Do they cross? Do they intersect? Yes, they do intersect. And I'm not going to stop just at intersecting. I'm not going to stop just at the one option, because remember, I have that all. I need to decide if there's more than one answer for this. So the next thing I'm going to look at is perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect, that form a right angle. So if I were to draw a triangle there, would those be perfect triangles? And the answer is yes. So number 3 is an example of something that is intersecting, but is also perpendicular. perpendicular. So because they're intersecting and they're perpendicular, they're not going to be parallel. So on your form that it's going to ask you to fill out, the sides aren't going to be highlighted, they're going to be dashed with very similar questions. Also similar on the questions that you're going to be asked is you're going to be given a group of 4 shapes. In the first question, you're going to be asked if they're parallel, and then the second question, you're going to be asked if they're perpendicular. And guess what? Shapes are so crazy that you can be both parallel and perpendicular at the same time, depending on which sides of the shape that you're looking at. So I'm going to go through first, and I'm going to try to find all the shapes that are parallel. So, remember, we've got those double L's to remind me that they never intersect. So if I'm looking at lines that never intersect, I'm going to look at, for this hexagon, I'm going to look at, remember hexagon has 6 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to look at the top and the bottom. And I'm going to look at those two. Do those two have lines that are never going to intersect with each other? And the answer is yes. So under parallel, I'm going to write the letter A. Now I'm going to move on to B. B is a triangle. Has 3 sides. Do I have any lines that don't intersect? And the answer is no. So triangles will never be parallel. They're always going to have to touch because there's 3 sides. So now let's look at C. C is kind of a tricky one. C is a rectangle or a quadrilateral, has 4 sides. I'm going to look at both my top and my bottom, and I can be like, yes, those 2 lines can continue on and never intersect. But this is crazy because I could also look at these sides, and those sides are also parallel. So it's like you get 2 parallels in one. So I'm going to put a comma there, and I'm going to choose C. So far I have A that is parallel and C that is parallel. So now I'm going to look at D. Do I have any sides that could be parallel? Again, I'm going to look at my top and my bottom. Are those 2 sides that could be parallel that will never intersect? And the answer is yes. So if I had to choose all the shapes that have parallel sides, I would choose A, C, and D. So that's like question number 1. Question number 2 is now asking which shapes are perpendicular. So I'm going to go back through all the shapes and see if I have any shapes that are perpendicular. Remember, I'm not asking about intersecting. I'm not asking if they cross. I'm asking for perpendicular. Do they cross and do they form that right angle? So you got to think to yourself, are they making that right angle? So when I look at my hexagon and I see that these cross, my first instinct is great, they intersect. But then I have to ask myself is, do they make a right angle? And the answer is no, they don't make a right angle. So because they don't make that right angle, they're not considered perpendicular. So I'm not going to put A over there. Now let's look at B. Remember on our other example, our triangle, I'm going to show you, looked a little different. It was slanted. On this triangle, I have one that goes directly vertical and one that goes directly horizontal, and it creates that square, that right angle. So I have to ask myself first, is it intersecting? Yes, it intersects. But then the second question is it perpendicular? And if you said yes, then you're correct. So I'm going to write the letter B over here. Now I'm going to look at C. And this is actually good that my lines are different colors. So I'm going to look at, it doesn't matter which side you're looking at, I'm going to look at right here where a pink and a purple intersect, because my purple is there, my pink is there, they're intersecting, and they also create a 90-degree angle, which means that this is also perpendicular. Last one, part D. If I were to take my purple line and cross it there, and I were to look at this line right here, does it create anywhere a square? And the answer would be no. So D does not have anything that is perpendicular. So once again, your first question was which ones were parallel, which were shapes A, C, and D, and which ones are perpendicular, B and C. So C was actually used in both categories. If you have any questions, make sure you ask either Miss Dean, Mr. McLaughlin, or myself, because we're here to help. And we can't wait to see you on Zoom later today. We love and miss you all, and stay healthy. Bye.